Oh boy, we have a lot to talk about with this topic. So I'm going to start with some preamble and hopefully you'll understand where I'm going with it. Now, many times when people marathon through a different horror series or they call themselves trying to make content related to that particular series, a lot of it is just by the numbers. They go and they watch a movie and that's it. They just, go and watch one, then watch two, then watch three. And there's not really much thought given to the things that happened in real life between each installment. And the way my mind has always worked is that when I like something, I try to know as much about it as possible. Like I just try to be informed on it. Now, Halloween 5 and Curse, which is the subtitle for the sixth movie, have a 6 year gap between releases. As someone who, watched all of these back to back, I kind of thought that was a little weird. Like I understood the gap between 2 and 4 was the result of it originally being intended for 2 to be the last movie with Michael in it. But I said, there had to have been something behind the scenes that kind of led to what we got. Now, full disclosure, I don't like Curse for a variety of reasons. One of them is that I really don't care for the idea of Michael being subservient to a cult. I don't really enjoy the cult as a group. I like other villains in Halloween, but they just seem kind of too organized for my taste. We'll get more into that later. But most of my problems with the movie have to do with its treatment of Jamie Lloyd. I really think it takes the character whose survival was the core plot of 4 and 5 and just throws her into the dumpster and renders 4 and 5 completely pointless because she's just going to get killed by her uncle anyway. I always was able to be fine with Laurie dying off screen because one, she wasn't killed by Michael, and also the real life explanation of Jamie Lee Curtis not wanting to come back was enough to give it a reason for it to have happened. Like it's something they just couldn't avoid. But I was looking at some of the stuff that happened between 5 and 6, and I've always, after discovering this, been fascinated by what could have occurred. Now, Mustafa Akkad, prior to 5 not performing to the financial success he had hoped, intended for Halloween 6 to come out the year after 5 in 1990, and for us to have three Halloween movies for 3 years straight, 3 years in a row. The plot isn't really well known, although it was believed at the time that 5 had finished, concluding that Danielle Harris and Don Shanks were going to come back as Jamie and Michael, and Donald Pleasance and Wendy Kaplan would possibly come back as Dr. Loomis and Tina. Of course, when 6 eventually ended up coming out, only Pleasance returned. Now, there would later be legal reasons for all the things that happened to cause 6 to get delayed back, pushed back even further than it already was going to be from the financial disappointment that 5 had. But I kind of wanted to think what could have happened if 6 came out the year after 5. Because I don't believe Jamie would have died. But I also think there's some things you could have done that were interesting that were set up by 5. So, like, for example, the first thing you have to address is the Man in Black. If I'm doing a sequel to 5, that's not going to be Win. A lot of people complain about him and the tattoo on his and Michael's arm, and they're like, "Oh, Colt of Thorns." Like the tattoo in 5, in strictly in that movie, is just a tattoo. So it's really something that's importance only gets elaborated on in the following movie. Again, if I'm doing a sequel to 5 and I'm having to reveal who the Man in Black is, I would have it be someone who just observes and is curious about what Michael is. He doesn't really have any control over him. He tries to help him in his own little ways, but he's not connected to a cult. He just is someone who is I'd say the secondary antagonist of the sixth movie. Now there was a sequence in five that happens very early on in the movie, which is where the rock is thrown through Jamie's room, and it has a little paper on it that says the evil child must die. I have always been fascinated by the idea of there being other villains in the Halloween series besides Michael. That's one of the reasons why I do like ends. I defend it sometimes. I say, I'm sympathetic towards it because it tried to give us a little variety. What I would like the core plot of six to be, if I'm writing it, is it's a year after Halloween 5. Michael has returned. He's looking for his niece, same old affair. But the twist here is that the town of Haddonfield is sick of this. They've had three murder sprees over the last, 12 years? And they want her out of town. They want her gone. They want her just to be banned, to never come back. If you get rid of her, you get rid of him because she's the reason he comes and does all this evil stuff every year. And with Jamie, because it's revealed in six that she's kidnapped by the cult of Thorn. That's not actually in the movie of five. At the end of five, she just left in the police station watching all the corpses lay around. I would have her be on this arc of having to accept that she is not responsible for what Michael does. She feels very guilty about it. And for that reason, she's attempted to kind of go her own way. Like she's vanished. She just kind of is in this weird pseudo homeless position where she doesn't have a place she lives anymore. She has some people who will occasionally give her food and just kind of like try to keep an eye on her, but she mostly just comes and goes, kind of like in this fatalist position of if I'm gonna die anyway, then I'm not. I'd rather die alone than die eventually after everyone that else I care about is killed off by my boogeyman uncle. And by the end of the movie, I would try to make it clear that she has now realized this is not her fault. This was something that predates her, literally, through his murder of Judith and attempted murder of Laurie. With Loomis, I would have him be in a more calmed position. Like, he's frantically and still very obsessively worried about trying to stop Michael, but he's kind of taken a step back and said, maybe I pushed things a little too far with, my last effort. Because a lot of people criticize his characterization in five. Oh, he used a child as bait. Oh my god. So I would kind of have a little meta commentary on that in the sense of he thinks I can kind of just relax a little bit, and he's more of the same in the general sense. But I don't so if it's not broke, don't fix it. And really, the only thing I would have that's a little bit different about him is he's a little bit more calmer. He still will have his sequences of rage because Michael is a sore spot for him. So if someone starts saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about," and he's really deceased and all the rest of that, he will doubt it and openly tell them, "No, you're incorrect. This is dangerous." But I try to make him the same old hero and a little bit more likable than people perceive him to be in five than we previously had. Now with Tina, she's interesting, and I tried to explain this in the character analysis I did of her last year. In five, she is someone who is a newcomer, has never met Michael. It's really a real life person's perspective if they're coming into a supernatural situation that everyone around them believes, but they don't. And now that she's observed him up close, she is much more cautious, takes him a lot more seriously. She still makes jokes. You always have to retain, some elements of the character, but there is a depressed aspect to her just demeanor. Like beneath the smile, you get these peeks into her sadness over the death of Rachel and the stabbing of Samantha and the disappearance of Jamie. It all just kind of like plays into her and also drives her to want to in some way help Loomis in taking Michael out. Now, I wouldn't have Meeker be as big of a player, but I would try to have the police force in Haddonfield be really reduced. It's maybe like three, four, five cops. Because a lot, almost all of them were killed by the Man in Black, and two, because it's hard to convince people to want to join a profession when there's a credible enough reason to think you're not going to make it, you're not going to survive. Like, if it were just Michael that people worried about, he has his knife, whatever. But the fact that for both the spree as depicted in Halloween 4, Michael went to the police station and murdered up all the cops when Meeker was away, and in 5, at the end of it with the shooting, there's a lot of people who just are not as convinced that this is something worth doing. So he has to deal with a very tiny police force and trying to find Jamie, as well as, the grief of losing his daughter in 4, as well as his men in 5. And I want him to kind of have this thing. He's like, I'm going to get the Man in Black. I'm going to get the Man in Black. Just determined. I guess if you want to draw a comparison, sort of like how I thought Hawkins was going to be that for against Michael and Ends, right? Like, at the start of Kills, I'm going to be the one that gets him. I mean, just we don't actually see any of that happen at all. But I would try to kind of establish that he, as someone, because I'm framing this as, even though it's not really a trilogy, 4, 5, and 6 as an attempted trilogy where you've seen him go from this person who in 4 doubted that Michael was ever coming back, in 5, you know, was more believing, had been personally affected by, and by 6, he's just ready to do anything to take him out. Um, so that would be his arc, where you have all the survivors, and this is one of the reasons why I said Halloween is my favorite horror series, because I like it when you can do a sequel to one of these and like keep building on at least a small group of characters, give them more to do, kind of have them process and react to things instead of just, hey, let's throw in all these new characters. Because one of the reasons I really don't like 6 is that, people call it the Thorn trilogy, but if you watch 4, 5, and 6, it feels like 4 and 6 feel completely different from each other and have almost nothing to do with each other. Rachel, who's one of the leads in 4, doesn't even get mentioned in 6. And of course, as I said earlier, the whole plot of 4 and 5 hinged on Jamie's survival. So to just get rid of her, have her do like, just get killed off in that movie is, again, like dilutes the point. But yeah, that's the plot. You would have the town of Haddonfield out to get Jamie, and Michael is out to get Jamie. The Man in Black is more of a neutral presence because he doesn't care one way or the other if Jamie dies, but he also would not really be that bothered by either helping her. Like if he's somewhere and he sees people about to get her, he's inclined to attack them to or stop them from getting her, but that's mainly because he wants to see Michael do that or Michael be able to go after her again. I want him to be a little bit more morally gray where he's not above doing things in favor of the protagonist, but he's also not on their side. He's not controlling Michael, he's not in charge of him. He doesn't have any group of followers. Again, this is not the same Man in Black as the one in Curse. And for that reason, I think he'd be more interesting as like this kind of third element. Like what is he gonna do? Just kind of like a wild card. But the subplot of the town is the part I really want to explore. Just seeing how they react to this girl, and like, do you have members who are sympathetic towards her? You have members who have like kind of rallied together like, hey, we need her out of here. And I want to have, again, all these different forces just kind of going at her at the same time to see which plays into the angle of, if she overcomes this, then suddenly that triumph is more cathartic, because it's not just, oh, you evaded your killer uncle that comes out once. You're like, no, these people have been trying to get her out of here for over a year, and they're kind of ramping it up now. But to see her be able to quell the forces of her uncle, the Man in Black, and these disenfranchised Haddonfield citizens, I think would be even more conducive to a unique movie, because you can explore the pathology of like just people believing, like irrationally believing that someone is the cause of someone else's actions and blaming that person for things they did not do. Also, this would be different from a lot of other Halloween movies in that I would, if I'm trying to make this, I'd animate it because you could at least, use all the different characters and whatnot. Um, with Halloween, it's always difficult to explain to people stuff about Michael. So like if I'm animating it, I would give Michael the blood over his mask, like you see in Halloween 2 after he gets shot by Laurie. Now, if I'm looking for an in-universe explanation, I could say that uh, all of his murders have caught up to him, not physically, as in like, oh, he's deteriorating or decaying, like in ends, as they claim, but rather the more he's going and doing these different sprees, it is starting to affect his outer appearance. He's exhibiting parts of his appearance that are not natural, like just bleeding from his eyes regularly. But the actual reason is I just think the blood on the eyes looks cool. That's it. That's the legitimate reason. And also, I should say, I know that Mustafa Akkad had the contract to never let Michael die, because he wanted to just keep making these forever. But I'm very serious when I say that if I'm making this, Michael will die. That will be the end of Michael. If you want to do some other stuff in this timeline after that, sure, but there's not going to be but he escaped through this, or no, that would be, because again, this is centered on the idea of I don't like the actual six. I just want something I can watch and be satisfied with in terms of being a conclusion. So yeah, this is my idea for an alternate Halloween 6. It's me attempting to do something that is similar to what I think would have happened if 6 had come out in 1990 like Akkad originally wanted before 5 underperformed. And I should say, if anyone likes 6, that's fine. I do not care. If you don't want an alternate version of it, that is perfectly okay. I'm just explaining my issues with it, and really just kind of outlining that if things were a little bit different in terms of when this movie came out and some of the creative choices, you could have actually had, I think, a pretty worthwhile movie with some varieties that would have made it a welcome addition to the series. And I have been tied up in a lot of real life obligations that I'll soon explain, but I do want to make this in some form, even if I have to just do pieces of it each month or do in 30-minute segments. I'm very serious about this being something I'd like to create. So thanks for hearing my ideas, and I appreciate it.